6 points for planting and growing healthy fruit trees. 6 points for tending and caring for your fruit trees well. The first point is younger is better. When you're buying your trees, the younger the tree is, the healthier it's going to be in the long run, the more productive it's going to be in the long run, the more disease and pest resistant it's going to be, and the tastier, the sweeter your fruit is going to be in the long run. That is because it's going to have more time to develop its proper root system in the soil, get a nice sprawling root system, nice and wide and deep, with less restricted, less stunted root growth. And that's just going to cause your plant to be able to take in more water, more minerals when it needs them, to find the minerals it needs. It's going to allow your plant to withstand more drought. It's going to allow your plant to get what it needs to produce the sugars that make that fruit really good. And that higher sugar content keeps your fruit trees from getting as sick, and it tends to keep a lot more of the pests away. When you buy a tree that's older, even something this big here, this one, even this tree here has got some root stunt. It's got root knot or root stunt. There's a few other names for it, but the roots have kind of turned into a bit of a tangled mess, and we got to work with that. When you're buying these big old tall trees, 6-7 feet tall, they're usually in a pot only about that big around, and that's problematic because the tree 7 feet tall wants to have its roots spreading 5 feet wide already, and it's got stunted roots. If you grow them in a pot, the roots are going to be stunted, and you're going to have to deal with it, and it takes a while, and your tree is always going to remember that it's a bit stunted. Roots are the most essential part of tree growth. The roots spread wider in the beginning than the foliage does. Roots grow faster in the beginning than the rest of the tree does because that's its base, that's its footing. If the roots get stunted early in the life of the tree will never reach its full potential. So we want those roots to be as nice and spreading and sprawled as we can. The younger tree you can buy, the better. If you can buy a whip, which is just a tree with little sapling, just a main stem, probably no side branches, little bitty thing. If I buy a little whip tree and I plant it right next to one of these big tall 6-7 foot tall trees, they're the same variety, in 3 years this little bitty 12-inch tall, 18-inch tall whip, single stem, no branches on it tree will have outgrown the big one. It will grow stronger and faster, and it will produce a higher yield once it starts fruiting than the taller tree will, because it had time to really develop its root growth more, and it was less root stunted from growing in the pot much less. Second point is root work. When you're planting a tree, you need to be doing your root work. You need to take care of the roots. You need to loosen the roots. The best thing to do with your roots when you're planting a tree, take it out and take that root ball and just put it in a bucket or a barrel of water and just slosh it around for a little bit. Up and down like that. You're not going to destroy anything. Go a little gentle at first. You're going to start getting all of that soil and peat moss or whatever's in there is going to start washing out pretty quick. And you're going to keep doing that until you have just bare roots. No dirt left in those roots. Now you take those roots and you loosen them up, untangle them, take your time as long as you need to. Untangle it, sprawl them out nice till it looks like a more natural spreading root system. Then you plant it in a hole that gives you enough space for that root system to go. When you do that, your tree will be able to take in a lot more water and a lot more nutrients early on from the soil. When the roots are all too close together, they're robbing each other of water and of soil nutrients. Feeding your tree. You got to feed your tree. If you don't feed your tree, it will never grow well. My neighbor was complaining to me recently, a couple miles down the road. He told me, I don't know if there's sense in growing a fruit tree anymore because I planted those ones 10 years ago and they only just started producing fruit. He put in some that were about this tall, 5 to 6 feet tall, and it took him 10 years before they actually produced anything. He thought they'd be taken care of because he planted them near his pond where there's enough water in the dirt. But they were never fertilized, they were never fed, and it's poor soil, very sandy soil, very low organic matter in the soil, just poor soil. They were just stunted and it took them forever to take off. I have the same trees I planted last year. This year they've got blossoms all over. They're already growing those little mini apples this year. The difference is I took really good care of those trees and they never got stressed out. They just didn't stress. You feed your trees with the natural ingredients that they need to take in, and that is soil fertilizers. Now, you can use a synthetic fertilizer. It works. I don't prefer it, but it works. I much prefer to use just some compost and mulch, things that break down and feed the soil biology, which then in turn, the soil biology feeds the tree, and it works much better. It feeds the tree better. I'm okay with using a little fertilizer and a little compost and mulch together. But the best thing of all for your tree is get some good quality compost, just scatter it around, put some in the planting hole, put a lot of it around your tree, and just leave it. It'll work itself into the dirt, the worms will work it in, it will feed the biology in your dirt, and it will feed your tree. You also want to mulch the tree because mulch around it is going to break down into compost over time and keep feeding that tree. The next point is tree dirt. You can create dirt that's much better for your tree or that's much worse for your tree. The best way to make dirt for your tree is to create a fungally dominant soil. And we do that largely by using mulch and by not tilling the soil much at all. When you till the soil, you really hurt the fungal growth in the soil, natural soil fungus. So we try not to till it or disturb it much, and we use woody material as for mulch as much as possible. Things like sawdust, wood chips, wood shavings, cherry pits, wood pellets. Those are all things that I've used and I'm currently using as mulches around my trees. They're just slowly going to break down. They're going to feed the fungus in the soil, and it's making a better soil overall for tree health, especially for root growth of those younger trees. Folks, please water your trees. If you're buying trees, take the time to water them. If there's not going to be irrigation available, figure out a way to do it. At least bring a barrel or a bucket of water for every tree and give them a good drench once a week, at least. You need to water newly planted trees as often as anything else in your garden would be watered because they don't have the wide enough and deep enough roots to seek out soil moisture on their own. They don't. You need to water them. The first year that you plant that tree, water it every week during all of the growing season. Okay? From planting to the end of the growing season. Every week give it water. On that same line, mulching helps with water because it's going to keep the soil much more moist, and it's going to keep the soil looser so the water flows a little bit more freely through the soil. Your roots can find the water easier. The last point is be careful of buying poor quality trees. It's tempting when you see these trees on clearance for half off or 75% off. They're kind of in disrepair. They still got some green growth on them. I'm sure a little bit of water and fertilizer will bring them around. Problem is, they're severely stunted. They're often going to get sick. They're very prone to illness and disease at that point. And quite often, at least half of the tree ends up dying. And now you've got a tree that's, well, it's got wood rot on part of it, and you got to deal with that, which invites more diseases and pests in. Buying a good quality tree is really amazing. It can be more expensive, sometimes 2, 3, 4 times more expensive, but it's often really worth it, especially if you're buying smaller trees, so they're already cheaper. Think of it like this. You probably wouldn't want to go and buy a couple of very sickly animals if you were just starting off getting into farming or homesteading. Maybe you don't want to go and buy very sickly trees if you're just starting off either. You can work with them and bring them back into good health if you really know what you're doing. But it's hard, and you tend to have long-term issues regardless. So try to buy good trees if you can. Don't forget, folks, check out the website northernhomesteading.com. That's my blog. Also, go ahead over to the Facebook group, Homestead Know-How. You can ask me any questions and I'll answer them there. I'm checking that stuff every day. I love talking to folks. Come and see me at Homestead Know-How, the Facebook group. The biggest points I can tell you for taking care of your trees, I'll give you 4 points. No till, okay? No till. What I mean by that is don't disturb your soil. It doesn't take much to start tearing into your tree roots. Trees have surprisingly shallow roots. Most of them have very shallow roots. You go down 6 inches, you're starting to really cut into roots on an apple tree. Don't till anywhere near the drip area where the canopy could shade around any fruit trees. It's bad for the soil. It tends to hurt the trees. leave the dirt alone. Next, water regularly. Water them suckers, they need it. A new planted tree is like a little baby. It needs regular maintenance. It can't take care of itself on its own yet. Mulch them suckers. When you mulch, you keep out competition, you keep out weed, you keep in moisture, you keep in soil fertility that otherwise would have leached out. Good stuff like that. And fourth, feed it. Feed your tree a little fertilizer, some good compost, again that mulch, good manure. Manure is good for fertilizer, it can work great as a mulch too. Feed your soil. I like to use compost. Amend your soil, amend it. Compost is good. Peat moss can help if you have really hard, really stiff clay soil, put some peat moss in there. I love biochar, which is just agricultural grade activated charcoal. I make it, I use it all over the place around here. It's not a fertilizer, it's a soil conditioner, and it helps to hold fertility in the soil. Well, there you go. That is everything I can tell you in a fairly short video about taking care of, planting, and growing fruit trees. Stay tuned, I'll have a lot more information later on for you too. I'll catch you later. Bye now.